My son called me an ugly embarrassment and walked out of my life, leaving me shattered, as if I were just a relic of his past he wanted to forget. But I wasn't defeated. I wasn't finished. While he thought he could erase the love and sacrifices I poured into his life, I was determined to rise again, something that would make him rethink his choices and feel the weight of his betrayal. This is how I began to reclaim my dignity and redefine my worth. I raised him with unwavering support, but when he turned against me, I was left questioning everything. My heart ached as I realized the person I adored had become a stranger. But instead of succumbing to despair, I chose to stand tall. I was ready to confront the painful truth and fight for the love we once had. Before I dive deeper into my story, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I want to know I'm not alone in this. And if my story resonates with you, consider subscribing. It gives me the strength to share my truth. Now, let's get into my story. I sat in my small kitchen, the afternoon sun streaming through the window. I enjoyed my tea while I thought about my son, Ethan. He was 35 now and had a successful career. I had always been proud of him. I worked hard my whole life, and now that I was retired, I looked forward to spending time with him. But things had changed. I noticed that Ethan avoided me more often. He had become busy with his work and his friends. I missed our talks and the way he used to laugh. I picked up my phone and decided to call him. When he answered, his voice was flat. I tried to sound cheerful. I asked him how he was. For a moment, there was silence. Then he spoke. "Mom, I need to tell you something." His tone was serious. I felt a knot in my stomach. I asked him what was wrong. "You can't come to my events anymore. You're an ugly embarrassment." I froze. His words hit me like a punch in the gut. I thought I misheard him. I asked him to repeat himself, but he just continued. "People talk. I can't have you around. Just stay away." I could not believe what I was hearing. My heart raced. I felt hot tears spill down my face. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. "Mom, I have to go." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, feeling empty and lost. How could he say that to me? I had given him everything. I had worked long hours to support him through school. I had always been there for him. I thought about the many times I had cheered for him. I remembered his first soccer game, his graduation, and all the family dinners we shared. I remembered the laughter and the hugs. Where had that boy gone? I picked up my cup, but my hands shook. I set it down, and it broke into pieces on the floor. I didn't care. I felt broken too. I thought about how much I loved him. I wanted to call him back and tell him how much I cared, but I didn't know what to say. I felt so small. Days passed, and I could not shake the feeling of despair. I tried to call him again, but he didn't answer. I sent texts, but he didn't reply. I started to feel like I was fading away. Every day, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a stranger. I had put on a few pounds since retiring. My hair was gray, and my skin was lined with age. Was that what made me an ugly embarrassment? I had always tried to take care of myself. I didn't want to believe that my worth was based on my looks. But Ethan's words echoed in my mind. I felt ashamed. I started to lose confidence in myself. I rarely left the house. I stopped meeting friends for coffee. I just sat in my empty home, feeling alone. One evening, I decided to go through old photos. I wanted to remember happier times. I found pictures of Ethan as a child. He was full of joy and laughter. I smiled at some of the memories. But then I found a photo of us at his college graduation. He looked so proud. I remembered how much I had supported him. I had sacrificed so much. And yet, now, he saw me as a burden. I closed the album and put it away. I felt heavy with sadness. I had lost my son, but I didn't understand why. I thought about how money had changed him. He had become successful, but at what cost? He was always concerned about appearances now. I had noticed that he only surrounded himself with people who cared about status and wealth. It was like a wall had built up between us. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I felt lost in a world I didn't recognize. I thought about reaching out to him again. But what would I say? I felt like I had no voice. Then I remembered my friends. I had friends who cared about me. Maybe I could reach out to them. I picked up my phone and hesitated. Would they understand? Would they see me as weak? But I realized that I needed support. I needed to talk about what had happened. I took a deep breath and sent a text to my friend Sarah. "Can we talk? I need to share something. It felt good to reach out. I put my phone down and closed my eyes, hoping for a better tomorrow. But deep down, I felt a storm brewing. I didn't know how to face Ethan again, or if I ever would. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a promise to myself. I would not be a victim. I would find a way to stand strong. I just needed to find my voice again. But for now, I had to gather my strength. I had no idea what was coming next, but I felt a tiny spark of hope. Perhaps I could find a way to turn this pain into something stronger. The days turned into weeks after Ethan's call. Each day felt heavy, like I was dragging a weight behind me. I tried to go about my life, but it was hard to shake the hurt. I missed my son. I wanted to understand what had happened. I stayed home a lot. The house felt empty without his laughter. I tried to fill my time with hobbies I used to enjoy, but nothing seemed to bring me joy. I picked up my paintbrush, but ended up staring at the blank canvas. I wanted to create something beautiful, but all I could see was my pain. I spent my evenings thinking about our past. I recalled times when we had fun together, family trips, game nights, and simple moments in the kitchen. I remember teaching Ethan how to ride a bike. The way he beamed when he finally succeeded was a memory I cherished. But that joy felt far away now. I could see how much he had changed since he became successful. He surrounded himself with new friends, people I didn't know. They were always dressed in fancy clothes and shared stories of expensive trips. I wondered if they had influenced him to see me differently. I tried calling him again, but he still didn't answer. Each time I heard the voicemail, I felt a pang of sadness. I couldn't understand how he could ignore me like this. I had always been there for him. One morning, as I poured myself a cup of tea, I glanced at a recent credit card statement on the table. My heart sank as I read the charges. There were many expensive items and fancy dinners. I didn't recognize most of the places listed. I felt a wave of anger and confusion. How could he spend so much? I had always been careful with money. I had saved for his education and my retirement. But now, it seemed like he was living a life far beyond what I could give him. Then it hit me. I remembered how Ethan had often asked for help with money. He had told me he needed it for bills. I had always sent him what he needed. But now, I realized he had been using my credit card without telling me. I felt betrayed. I had supported him, and now he had taken advantage of my trust. I decided I needed to confront him. I could not let this go. That evening, I gathered my courage and called him again. This time, he answered, but his tone was distant. I took a deep breath and spoke. Ethan, we need to talk about your credit card charges. There was silence on the other end. I could hear him breathe, but he said nothing. Why are there so many charges for things I didn't agree to? You told me you needed help with bills. His voice turned cold. He responded as if I was the one in the wrong. Mom, it's just money. Why are you making a big deal out of it? My heart raced. I felt so small. Ethan, it's my money. You can't just use it without asking. I heard him scoff. You are overreacting. I've worked hard. I deserve nice things. I felt my anger rise. You deserve nice things? What about me? I sacrificed so much for you. He dismissed my words. You're just sensitive. You need to get over it. I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. His dismissal hurt more than I could express. I thought he would understand my feelings, but he was only focused on himself. I hung up the phone, feeling more alone than ever. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I sat in silence, feeling powerless. The following days were filled with a mix of sadness and anger. I felt betrayed, not just by Ethan, but by the relationship we once had. I felt like I was losing my son to someone I didn't know. I reached out to Sarah, my friend, and told her everything. I needed support, and I needed to be heard. We met for coffee, and I poured out my heart. You have to stand up for yourself, Veronica, she said. He's taking advantage of you. I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. I knew I needed to take control of the situation. I needed to find my strength. That night, I started writing in a journal. I documented my feelings, my memories, and everything that had happened with Ethan. I wrote down the charges I had seen on my credit card statement. I wanted to keep track of everything, just in case I needed to confront him again. As I wrote, I felt my emotions start to shift. I realized I was not just a victim. I had a voice, and I could stand up for myself. I began to think about seeking legal advice. I didn't want to take things that far, but I needed to know my options. I wanted to protect myself and my finances. With each passing day, I felt a small fire ignite within me. I was tired of feeling powerless. I had given so much to Ethan, and it was time to stand my ground. I knew I had to gather evidence and prepare for what was coming next. I was ready to fight for myself. I just needed to find the courage to take the first step. And so, I made a promise to myself. I would not allow my son's actions to define me. I would take control of my life and reclaim my worth. The journey ahead would be tough, but I felt ready to face it. I spent the next few days reflecting on my past with Ethan. It was hard to accept that he had changed so much. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for him over the years. I had worked long hours to give him a good life. I wanted him to succeed, and I believed I had played a big part in that. As I went through old boxes in my attic, I found his school report cards and photos from family vacations. I remembered how I had saved money to send him to college. I had worked 2 jobs, sometimes late into the night, to make sure he had everything he needed. But now, I felt like none of that mattered to him. I felt invisible, as if my love and support had been forgotten. I couldn't shake the feeling that he had become someone I didn't recognize. One afternoon, I sat down with my recent credit card statement again. I knew I had to confront the reality of the situation. The charges were shocking. They were not just small purchases. There were expensive dinners, designer clothes, and hotel stays. Each line felt like a stab in my heart. How could he justify this? As I looked closer, I noticed the dates of the charges. Many of them were made shortly after he had asked me for money. He had claimed he needed help with his bills, but instead, he was living a lavish lifestyle. I felt my anger boil inside me. I had trusted him. I had believed he was struggling, and instead, he was using my money to enjoy himself. I felt betrayed and angry. I knew I had to do something about it. That evening, I called Sarah again. I needed someone to talk to. When we met, I shared my findings. I explained how I had supported Ethan and how he had taken advantage of me. Sarah listened carefully, her face showing concern. "You need to protect yourself, Veronica," she said. "You deserve better than this." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I needed to take action. I needed to confront Ethan, but I also needed to prepare for what might come next. After our meeting, I decided to write down everything I could remember about my financial help to Ethan. I listed the amounts I had sent him and the dates. I wanted to have a clear picture of what I had given him. It was painful to write, but I knew it was necessary. As I wrote, I felt a mix of emotions. I was proud of my sacrifices, but I was also angry that he had taken advantage of me. I had given with love, and now it felt like he had turned that love into a weapon against me. I took a break and poured myself a cup of tea. I thought about the times Ethan had called me for help. I remembered how eager I had been to support him, but now it felt like he had turned my kindness into something ugly. That night, I decided to check the rest of my financial documents. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. As I searched through my files, I found more reasons to be concerned. I discovered that he had made multiple unauthorized purchases on my credit card over the past months. My heart raced as I counted the total. It was a significant amount, enough to make me feel sick. I couldn't believe that my own son had done this to me. I felt a mix of fear and determination. I needed to confront him, but I also knew I had to protect myself. I decided to seek legal advice. I wanted to understand my options and how to deal with this situation. The next day, I called a local lawyer who specialized in financial issues. The receptionist was friendly and set up an appointment for me. I felt a mix of nerves and hope. I was taking a step towards reclaiming my life. When I arrived at the law office, I felt anxious. I was not used to discussing my personal problems with strangers. But as I sat down with the lawyer, I felt a sense of relief. She listened to my story without judgment. I explained what had happened with Ethan and the credit card charges. She was understanding and took notes as I spoke. "You have a right to protect your finances," she said. "We can discuss your options, and I can help you gather evidence if needed." Hearing her words gave me hope. I wasn't alone in this fight. I began to feel empowered. For the first time, I felt like I had a plan. We talked about how to gather evidence and what steps I could take next. She suggested keeping a record of all the charges and any communication I had with Ethan regarding money. I nodded, determined to take her advice. As I left the office, I felt lighter. I was no longer just a victim. I was taking control of my situation. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them. That night, I sat down with my journal again. I wrote about my meeting with the lawyer and how I felt more empowered. I was ready to stand up for myself. I would no longer let Ethan's actions define me. I had given him so much love and support, but now it was time to put myself first. I was ready to fight for my dignity and my future. I felt a sense of strength building inside me, and I knew I could face whatever lay ahead. I spent the next few days gathering evidence. I collected all my credit card statements and wrote down every detail about the charges. I felt a mix of anger and sadness as I looked at the numbers. I had trusted Ethan, and now it felt like betrayal. I knew I had to confront him again. I decided to call him and arrange a meeting. I needed to speak to him face to face. I wanted him to hear my feelings, not just through a phone. When I called, he answered, but sounded annoyed. I told him I wanted to meet to discuss some important matters. He hesitated, but finally agreed to meet at a cafe near my house. On the day of the meeting, I felt nervous. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say in my mind. I wanted to be strong, but I also wanted him to understand how much his actions had hurt me. When I arrived at the cafe, I spotted him sitting at a table. He looked casual, scrolling through his phone. I took a deep breath and walked over to him. "Hi, Ethan," I said, trying to sound calm. He looked up and gave a half-hearted smile. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" I sat down and felt my hands tremble. I had to find the right words. "I wanted to talk about the credit card charges," I started. His expression changed. "Mom, we've been over this. Can we not drag this out?" "No, we can't just ignore it," I said firmly. "You used my credit card without my permission. I need to understand why." Ethan rolled his eyes. "I told you, it's just money. I needed it." "But you lied to me. You asked for help with bills, and instead, you spent it on fancy dinners and clothes," I replied, feeling the heat rise in my chest. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You're being overly dramatic. You should be happy for me. I'm doing well." "Doing well at my expense?" I shot back. His face hardened. "You're making this all about you. I've worked hard for what I have." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. "You think this is about me? I'm hurt, Ethan. I loved you and supported you. I never expected this." He scoffed. "Maybe you should have thought twice before giving me money." I felt my heart drop. How could he twist my love into something so cruel? "I have always supported you because I believed in you," I said, my voice trembling. "But you've taken advantage of that. This isn't the son I raised." Ethan leaned in, his tone cold. "You're being sensitive. Just let it go." I felt a surge of anger. "I won't let it go. I deserve respect. You need to take responsibility for your actions." He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "What are you going to do? Take me to court?" I took a deep breath. "If that's what it takes, then yes. I'm serious, Ethan. I'm done being treated like this." His eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "I am serious," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "You need to return the money you took. It's not just about the money, though. It's about the trust you've broken." He shook his head, seeming angry and confused. "This is ridiculous. You're my mother. You should support me, not threaten me." I felt my heart ache. "I will always support you, but I will not support this behavior. You can't just take what isn't yours." Ethan stared at me, his expression shifting from anger to something softer. I hoped he might finally understand. "Mom, I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, his voice quieter. "I just got caught up in everything." "You need to understand the impact of your choices," I replied. "I've worked hard for what I have, and I won't let you take it from me." He looked down, avoiding my gaze. "I'll think about it." I felt a flicker of hope, but knew it wasn't enough. I needed to protect myself no matter what. "Thinking isn't enough, Ethan. You need to take action," I said firmly. "We can work this out, but you have to meet me halfway." He nodded slowly, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. I wasn't sure if he would change. We finished our drinks in silence. I felt drained, but relieved to have spoken my mind. I knew I had to follow through with my plans. I had to consult my lawyer if things didn't improve. As we left the cafe, I felt a mix of emotions. I was still his mother, but I was also standing up for myself. I couldn't let his actions define my worth. When I got home, I sat down and wrote in my journal. I recorded everything that had happened during our meeting. I felt a sense of clarity. I knew I was on the right path, even if it was difficult. I had to protect myself and my finances. I wouldn't let Ethan's choices control my life any longer. The next day, I called my lawyer. I wanted to discuss my options regarding the unauthorized charges. I felt ready to take the next step if needed. I was determined to reclaim my life. I would fight for my dignity and my peace of mind. I had given Ethan my love, but now it was time to turn that love inward. I felt stronger with each passing day, and I knew I would not back down. After my meeting with Ethan, I felt a mix of hope and anxiety. I knew I had to take control of my life, but the fear of what might happen next lingered in the back of my mind. I spent the next few days preparing for what lay ahead. I started journaling more frequently. Writing helped me process my emotions and organize my thoughts. I poured my heart onto the pages, documenting my feelings about Ethan, my pain, and my determination to stand up for myself. As I wrote, I found clarity. I realized that I needed to focus on my own well-being. I had neglected myself for too long. I decided to reach out to friends and reconnect with the people who cared about me. One afternoon, I called Sarah and invited her over. I needed support and someone to talk to. When she arrived, I made us tea and we sat in my living room. I feel good about standing up for myself, I said, looking her in the eye. But I also feel scared. She nodded, understanding my struggle. It's normal to feel that way, Veronica. You're doing something brave. It's okay to be scared. I took a deep breath. I just don't want to lose Ethan completely, but I can't let him keep hurting me. Sarah reached out and squeezed my hand. You're not losing him. You're setting boundaries. You're showing him what is acceptable and what is not. Her words comforted me. I had to remember that I was not doing this out of anger, but out of love for myself. As the days passed, I began to rediscover my passions. I picked up my paintbrush and started to create again. Each stroke on the canvas felt like a step toward healing. I poured my emotions into my art, and it felt freeing. I also decided to join a support group for parents of estranged adult children. I knew I needed to find others who understood my pain. The group met weekly, and each session was a space to share experiences and support one another. The first meeting was difficult. I listened as others shared their stories of loss and heartache. I felt a sense of camaraderie with them. I realized I wasn't alone in this struggle. When it was my turn to speak, I hesitated, but then I shared my story. I talked about Ethan, the money, and the hurt I felt. I could see the understanding in their eyes as I spoke. After the meeting, several members approached me. They offered kind words and support. I felt lighter. I was beginning to realize how important it was to connect with others who understood my journey. As I continued to work through my emotions, I also focused on gathering evidence regarding Ethan's credit card charges. I kept meticulous records of my findings, including all the statements and any messages we exchanged about money. One evening, I sat down with a cup of tea in my journal. I reflected on my progress. I felt stronger and more confident than I had in a long time. I was no longer just a victim of my circumstances. I was taking charge of my life. I decided to call my lawyer again. I wanted to discuss the next steps in case I needed to take legal action against Ethan. I needed to be prepared for whatever might come next. When I met with her, she listened carefully as I explained my situation. She advised me on how to proceed, emphasizing the importance of gathering evidence and documenting everything. You have a strong case, Veronica, she said, but it's also important to think about what you want. Do you want to repair your relationship with Ethan, or are you more focused on protecting yourself? Her question hit me hard. I wanted both, but I knew I had to prioritize my own well-being. I had spent years supporting him, and now it was time to focus on myself. I left the meeting feeling empowered. I had a plan in place, and I felt ready to take action if necessary. That night, as I painted, I thought about Ethan. I hoped he would come to understand the hurt he had caused. I wanted him to see that I loved him, but I could not allow him to treat me poorly. I finished my painting and stepped back to admire my work. It was a reflection of my journey, a mix of darkness and light. I realized that I was on a path to healing, and each day I grew stronger. I felt a sense of pride as I looked at my painting. It represented my resilience and determination. I was ready to face whatever came next. The following week, I received a text from Ethan. It was short and to the point. He wanted to meet again. My heart raced, but I felt prepared. I would stand my ground and make sure he understood that I valued myself. As the day of our meeting approached, I felt both anxious and hopeful. I was ready to confront him again, but this time, I wouldn't back down. I had come too far to let fear control me. I would speak my truth and demand the respect I deserved. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my strength. I was no longer just a mother. I was a woman reclaiming her power. I would face this challenge head on, and no matter the outcome, I knew I would be okay. The day of my meeting with Ethan arrived, and I felt a mix of nervousness and determination. I had prepared myself for this conversation. I wanted him to understand the impact of his actions on my life. I had to be clear about my boundaries. When I arrived at the cafe, I took a moment to breathe deeply. I reminded myself that I was strong and ready to stand up for myself. I spotted Ethan sitting at a table, looking at his phone. He seemed relaxed, but I knew this meeting was important. As I approached him, I felt my heart race. I sat down and forced myself to smile, even though I felt anxious inside. "Hi, Ethan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, Mom," he replied, looking up briefly. "What's this about?" I took a deep breath. "I want to talk about the money and the credit card charges." He sighed, clearly annoyed. "Can't we just drop it?" "No, we can't," I said firmly. "You need to understand how your actions have affected me." Ethan rolled his eyes. "I told you, I needed that money." "I thought you needed help with bills, not lavish dinners and trips," I said, feeling my frustration rise. "You have used my trust against me." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I didn't think it was a big deal." I felt anger bubbling inside me. "It is a big deal, Ethan. You lied to me. You took advantage of my kindness." He looked away, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did," I replied, my voice steady. "I've spent years supporting you, and now you see me as a means to an end. That's not love." He looked conflicted, but I could see the defensiveness in his eyes. "I've worked hard for what I have. You should be proud of me." "I am proud of you, but that doesn't give you the right to treat me this way," I said, my heart racing. "You need to take responsibility for your actions." He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to return the money you've taken," I said. "It's not just about the money, Ethan. It's about respect and trust." He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "This is ridiculous. You're my mother. You should understand." "I do understand," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "But I also know that I deserve respect. You need to realize that your actions have consequences." For a moment, there was silence between us. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He looked angry, but also confused. I hoped he was beginning to understand. "I just don't want to deal with this," he said finally. "I understand it's uncomfortable," I said, "but avoiding it won't make it go away. You have to face the consequences of your choices." He looked down at the table, seemingly lost in thought. I took a moment to gather my own thoughts. I was ready to take the next step if he continued to dismiss my feelings. "I've talked to a lawyer about the credit card charges," I said, watching his reaction closely. "I need to protect myself." His head snapped up, eyes wide. "You're serious about this?" "Yes, I am," I replied. "I don't want to take legal action against you, but I will if I have to." He looked angry, but I could also see fear in his eyes. "You wouldn't really do that to your own son." "I don't want to," I said, my voice softening, "but I can't let you keep using me. I deserve to be treated with respect." Ethan leaned back in his chair, looking defeated. "This is all so messed up." "It is," I agreed, "but we can't fix it if you refuse to acknowledge what you've done." After a long pause, he spoke again. "What if I promise to pay you back?" I felt a flicker of hope. If you truly mean it, then we can work out a plan, but you need to take it seriously. He nodded slowly, still looking troubled. I will. I'll pay you back. I felt a mix of relief and caution. We need to set clear boundaries going forward. I want you to understand that my support comes with respect. He sighed again, but this time it felt different. Okay, I get it. I'll do better. I nodded, hoping he meant it. I want to believe you, Ethan, but this is going to take time. Trust is built, not given. We finished our conversation, and as we left the cafe, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. I had stood my ground, and I had made my intentions clear. Over the next few weeks, I continued to gather evidence regarding the credit card charges. I kept in touch with my lawyer, preparing for any possible next steps. I felt empowered, knowing I was taking control of my life. During this time, I also continued attending my support group. Sharing my experiences with others helped me find strength in my journey. I realized I wasn't alone, and that gave me hope. Ethan started to reach out more frequently. He seemed more open to discussions about our relationship and his financial choices. I still felt cautious, but I was willing to give him a chance. One evening, as I was painting, I reflected on how far I had come. I had faced my fears and stood up for myself. I was proud of my progress. I knew the journey ahead would still have challenges, but I was ready to face them. I had reclaimed my voice, and I was no longer just a victim. I was a woman taking charge of her life, and that felt powerful. I hoped that with time, Ethan would come to understand the importance of respect and trust. I wanted to believe that we could rebuild our relationship, but I also knew that I had to put myself first. As I finished my painting, I smiled. It was a representation of my journey, a mix of struggles and triumphs. I was ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing I had the strength to overcome it. Weeks passed after my conversation with Ethan. I felt a shift in our relationship, but I wasn't sure if it was real. He started to reach out more, and I noticed he seemed different. There was a hint of humility in his voice, but I remained cautious. One evening, I received a text from him. He wanted to meet again. My heart raced. I had mixed feelings, hope and fear. I wanted to believe he was ready to make amends, but I also felt the weight of our past. When I arrived at the cafe, I noticed Ethan sitting at a table, looking nervous. He was fidgeting with his phone, a sign that he was anxious. As I approached, I took a deep breath to calm my nerves. "Hi, Ethan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, Mom," he replied, his gaze meeting mine briefly before looking down again. "Thanks for meeting me." I sat down, trying to read his expression. "What's on your mind?" He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said last time. I realize I've been a jerk." His words surprised me. I wasn't expecting such honesty. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied. "It means a lot." "I want to make things right," he continued. "I've started to look for a job that pays better. I want to pay you back what I owe." I felt a rush of relief mixed with skepticism. "That's a good step, Ethan, but it's more than just the money." He nodded. "I know. I want to work on our relationship too. I've been selfish, and I don't want to lose you." I felt tears prick my eyes. I wanted to believe him, but trust was hard to rebuild. It's going to take time. Trust is something you have to earn back. He looked down, his expression serious. "I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As we talked, I noticed he was more engaged. He listened to me, and I could see a change in his demeanor. I felt hopeful, but I also knew that words were just the beginning. "Have you thought about how you want to pay me back?" I asked, wanting to clarify our next steps. "I'm going to cut back on my expenses," he said. "I'll save up and start paying you small amounts each month." "That sounds reasonable," I replied, feeling a sense of relief. "But remember, it's not just the money. I need to see real change in how you treat me." "I get it," he said earnestly. "I'll show you. I promise." Our conversation continued, and I felt a warmth growing between us. We talked about lighter topics too, his work, my painting, and even some of our favorite memories. I could see him opening up, and it felt good to connect again. As we finished our drinks, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. It was a step forward, but I knew that rebuilding trust would take time. I wanted to believe in his promise, but I also needed to protect my heart. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept his word. He started paying me back small amounts, and I noticed he was genuinely trying to change his spending habits. He invited me to lunch and even asked for my opinion on a few personal matters. It felt good to be included in his life again. I watched as he slowly began to take responsibility for his actions. I felt proud of him, but I was also careful not to let my guard down completely. One day, I received a call from Ethan's girlfriend, Lily. She wanted to talk to me. I was surprised, but agreed to meet her. I felt curious about her perspective. When we met, she seemed friendly and genuine. "I've seen the changes in Ethan," she said. "He cares about you a lot. He's been talking about how he wants to fix things with you." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. "I hope he means it. It's been hard for both of us." "I know," she replied. "He's really trying to change. I think he just needed a wake-up call. You've been a big part of his life, and he doesn't want to lose you." Her words reassured me. It felt good to hear that Ethan was trying. I shared some of my concerns with Lily, and she listened carefully. "I think you should give him a chance," she said. "He really seems committed to making things right, and I'm here to support him too." As we talked, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I realized that I wasn't alone in this journey. Lily wanted to help Ethan, and I appreciated her support. After our conversation, I felt hopeful. I returned home and wrote in my journal about my meeting with Lily. I expressed my desire to rebuild my relationship with Ethan, but I also reminded myself to be cautious. Days turned into weeks, and I continued to see positive changes in Ethan. He was more respectful and attentive. I felt like we were beginning to heal, but I still had to remind myself that change takes time. One evening, as I was painting, I reflected on how far I had come. I had faced my fears and set boundaries. I had stood up for myself, and I was proud of that. I hoped that with time, Ethan would fully understand the importance of our relationship. I wanted to believe that we could rebuild our bond, but I also knew that it would take effort from both of us. As I finished my painting, I felt a sense of peace. I was no longer just a victim of my circumstances. I was a woman reclaiming her power. I was ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing I had the strength to overcome any challenge. With each passing day, I grew more confident in my ability to navigate this new chapter in my life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. As the weeks went by, I felt a cautious sense of hope. Ethan was making an effort to change, and I could see the sincerity in his actions. He was more respectful and engaged in our conversations. But deep down, I still felt a nagging worry. I had been hurt too many times before. Despite his progress, I knew I had to set clear boundaries. I decided it was time for another conversation. I wanted to be honest about my feelings and expectations moving forward. One afternoon, I called Ethan and asked him to meet me at the same cafe. He agreed, and I felt a mix of nerves and determination as I prepared for our discussion. I wanted to make sure he understood how important this was to me. When I arrived, I found him waiting, looking a bit anxious. I sat down and smiled, trying to ease the tension. "Hi, Ethan," I said. "I'm glad we could meet again." "Hey, Mom," he replied, looking a bit unsure. "What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath. "I wanted to check in with you about how things have been going. I've noticed the changes, and I appreciate your efforts." He nodded, relief washing over his face. "Yeah, I've been trying. I really want to fix things between us." "That's good to hear," I said, feeling encouraged. "But I also want to talk about some boundaries. It's important for me to feel secure in our relationship." His expression shifted to one of seriousness. "I understand. What do you mean by boundaries?" "I need to know that I can trust you," I explained. "Trust is something we have to rebuild together. I want to make sure we're both on the same page." He listened intently, nodding along. "I get it. I don't want to lose your trust again. I'll do whatever it takes." I felt a mix of hope and caution. I appreciate that, but I also need to be clear about the financial side of things. I expect you to keep up with the payments we discussed. "Of course," he said quickly. "I'm committed to paying you back. I'll make it a priority." I looked into his eyes, searching for sincerity. "It's not just about the money, Ethan. It's about respect and understanding. I want you to know that you can't take advantage of my kindness again." "I promise I won't," he said, his voice earnest. "I've learned my lesson. I took a moment to gather my thoughts. I also want to be more open with you. If something bothers me, I'll tell you. I hope you'll do the same. He nodded. I agree. I want us to communicate better. As we talked, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. This conversation felt different. He was genuinely trying to understand my perspective. After discussing our boundaries, I decided to bring up a more sensitive topic. Ethan, I want to talk about what happened before. I know I've mentioned it, but I need you to understand how deeply it affected me. He looked serious, and I could see he was preparing to listen. Go ahead. When you called me an ugly embarrassment, it cut deep, I said, my voice steady. I felt like my worth was tied to how you saw me. I don't want to feel that way again. He looked down, shame washing over his face. I'm sorry for saying that. I was wrong, and I regret it. I need to hear that, I said softly. I want to build a relationship where we can support each other, not tear each other down. I promise I'll do better, he said, looking me in the eye. I don't want to hurt you again. We continued to talk about our feelings and expectations. I felt like we were finally making progress. It was a long road ahead, but I was willing to walk it with him. As we wrapped up our conversation, I felt a sense of relief. I could see that he was genuinely trying to change, and I was hopeful for our future. But just as I was starting to feel optimistic, Ethan's expression shifted. He looked conflicted. Mom, there's something I need to tell you. My heart raced. What is it? I've been planning a trip with some friends, he said, his voice hesitant. I wanted to invite you along, but I didn't know how you'd feel about it. I felt a mix of surprise and concern. A trip? When is it? In a couple of weeks, he replied. We're going to the coast for a weekend. I thought it could be a way for us to reconnect. I paused, considering his invitation. I appreciate you wanting to include me, but I need to think about it. I understand, he said quickly. I just thought it might help us. I want to show you that I'm serious about making things right. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to go. Spending time together could be a good way to heal, but I also worried about how things might go. I didn't want to set myself up for disappointment. I'll think about it, I finally said, but I need to make sure this trip reflects the changes we've talked about. He nodded, looking grateful. That's fair. Just let me know. As we finished our drinks and prepared to leave, I felt a mix of emotions. I was proud of how far we had come, but I also knew the journey was far from over. I left the cafe feeling hopeful but cautious. I wanted to believe in our relationship again, but I needed to hold on to my boundaries. Back at home, I sat down with my journal and reflected on our meeting. I wrote about our conversation, the progress we were making, and my feelings about the trip. I wanted to be sure I was making the right choice. As I closed my journal, I felt a sense of peace. I was taking control of my life, and I was ready to face whatever came next. Whether I decided to join Ethan on the trip or not, I knew I was strong enough to handle it. I would continue to stand up for myself and prioritize my own well-being. The days leading up to Ethan's trip felt heavy with anticipation. I had thought a lot about his invitation. Part of me wanted to go, to reconnect and enjoy some time together, but another part of me was hesitant. I wanted to ensure he was truly changing before diving back into our old patterns. As I sat in my living room, I picked up my journal again. I wrote down my thoughts and feelings about the trip. I wanted to be honest with myself. I needed to remember my boundaries and my worth. I decided to reach out to Sarah for her perspective. She had been my rock throughout this journey. I called her and asked if she could meet up. We found a quiet cafe, and I felt a wave of relief as I settled into a seat across from her. How have you been? She asked, her eyes warm and inviting. I've been okay, I replied, but the uncertainty lingered in my voice. Ethan invited me on a trip with his friends. That sounds like a big step, she said, leaning in. How do you feel about it? I'm torn, I admitted. I want to reconnect, but I'm scared. What if things go wrong? Sarah nodded, understanding my struggle. It's normal to feel that way. You've been through a lot. What do you want to happen on this trip? I want to see if he's really changed, I said, but I also want to protect myself. I don't want to set myself up for disappointment. Have you thought about what you would need to feel comfortable going? She asked. I took a moment to think. I need to know that he's taking this seriously. It can't just be a fun getaway. It has to mean something. That makes sense, she said. You deserve to feel safe and respected. Maybe you could set some expectations before you decide. Her words helped me clarify my thoughts. I realized I needed to communicate my feelings to Ethan before making a decision. I wanted to be clear about what I needed from him during this trip. After our conversation, I felt more empowered. I decided to call Ethan and discuss my thoughts. When I reached him, he answered with excitement. "Hey, Mom! Have you thought about the trip?" he asked. "I have," I replied, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. "But I want to talk about it first. I need to set some expectations." "Of course," he said quickly. "What do you need?" "I want to make sure this trip is about reconnecting, not just having fun," I said. "I need to see that you're committed to our relationship and that you respect my boundaries." "I get it," he replied, sounding serious. "I want this to mean something too." We talked about what the trip could look like. I expressed my need for open communication and honesty while we were away. I wanted to make sure we were both on the same page. "I promise I'll be mindful of your feelings," he said. "I want to support you and show you that I can be trusted." His words gave me hope. I felt like we were finally moving in the right direction. I could see that he was willing to put in the effort. After our conversation, I felt lighter. I was ready to take a leap of faith. I decided to join him on the trip. I wanted to see if we could rebuild our relationship in a new way. The day of the trip arrived, and I packed my bags with excitement and nervousness. I tried to focus on the positive aspects. Spending time together could be a good opportunity for both of us. When I arrived at the meeting point, I spotted Ethan waiting with a group of his friends. He looked happy to see me, and I felt a flutter of hope in my chest. "Mom, you made it," he said, his smile genuine. "Of course," I replied. "I'm excited to be here." As we drove to the coast, I chatted with Ethan and his friends. I tried to engage with them, even though I felt a bit out of place. They were young and vibrant, and I was still getting used to this new dynamic. Once we arrived, the beauty of the coast took my breath away. The waves crashed against the shore, and the salty air felt refreshing. I could see Ethan's excitement as he pointed out various sights. It reminded me of the times we spent together when he was younger. We settled into our rental house, and I began to relax. The atmosphere felt light, and I appreciated being away from my daily routine. I hoped this trip would be a turning point for us. Later that evening, we gathered for dinner. I watched as Ethan interacted with his friends, laughing and joking. I felt proud of him. He seemed to be enjoying life and embracing the moment. After dinner, we sat around a fire pit, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. I felt the warmth of the fire and the camaraderie of the group. It was nice to see Ethan so happy, but I reminded myself to stay grounded. As the night went on, I found a moment to talk to Ethan privately. "I'm glad we're here together," I said, looking him in the eye, "but I want to make sure we keep the lines of communication open." He nodded, his expression serious. "I promise. If anything bothers you, let me know. I want this to be a good experience for both of us." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief. "Thank you. That means a lot to me." The trip continued, and each day felt like a new opportunity for us to connect. We went for walks along the beach and shared meals together. I could see Ethan making an effort to include me in conversations and activities. But there were moments when I felt the old patterns creeping back in. And when he joked with his friends, I sometimes felt like an outsider. I reminded myself to stay focused on our progress. One afternoon, as we walked along the shore, I decided to bring up my feelings again. "Ethan, I want to talk about how things have been so far." He looked at me, open and attentive. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "I appreciate your efforts to include me," I said, "but sometimes I feel a bit lost in the group. I want to feel like I'm part of this too." He paused, considering my words. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I'll do better to make sure you're included." I felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you for listening. It really helps me." As the trip went on, I felt a sense of hope blooming. We were beginning to rebuild our relationship, one step at a time. I knew we still had a long way to go, but I was proud of the progress we were making. By the end of the trip, I realized that we were creating new memories together. I felt a sense of connection that I hadn't felt in a long time. I was grateful for this experience and the chance to see Ethan in a new light. As I packed my bags to head home, I felt a mix of emotions. I had taken a leap of faith, and it had paid off. I was excited to continue this journey with Ethan, knowing that we were both committed to making things work. As we drove back from the coast, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The trip had been a turning point for both Ethan and me. We had shared laughter and tears, and I could see the changes in him. He was trying hard to be the son I remembered, and I was hopeful about our future. Once we arrived home, I took a moment to reflect on the journey we had taken together. It had been a long road filled with challenges, but we were finally starting to rebuild our relationship. I felt proud of both of us. A few days after returning, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, going through my journal. I wrote about the trip, capturing the moments that stood out to me. I wrote about the laughter around the fire pit, the walks on the beach, and the conversations we had. I felt grateful for the opportunity to reconnect. But I also knew that our journey was far from over. I needed to stay committed to setting boundaries and ensuring that our relationship was built on mutual respect. I wanted to be open with Ethan about my feelings and expectations moving forward. That evening, I called Ethan to check in. I wanted to see how he was feeling after the trip. When he answered, his voice was upbeat. "Hey, Mom! I've been thinking about our time at the coast. It was so much fun," he said, sounding genuinely excited. "I had a great time too," I replied, feeling warmth in my heart. "I think we made some real progress." "I agree," he said. "I want to keep that going. I've been working on my budgeting too. I'll make sure to keep up with the payments I promised." I felt a rush of relief. "That's good to hear, Ethan. I'm proud of you for trying." We continued to talk, and I felt a sense of connection that had been missing for so long. I realized that I was beginning to trust him again, but I also knew I had to be vigilant. Trust takes time to rebuild, and I wanted to ensure we were both committed to the process. As days turned into weeks, I noticed positive changes in Ethan's behavior. He was more responsible with his finances, and he made an effort to include me in his life. He reached out more often, asking about my day and sharing his own experiences. It felt good to be part of his world again. One afternoon, as I was painting, I received a call from Ethan. He sounded a bit nervous. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I replied, putting my brush down. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversations and my past mistakes," he said. "I want to apologize again for how I treated you. I didn't realize how much my actions hurt you." Hearing him say that meant a lot. "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said. "It's important for me to hear." "I want to make sure I'm a better son," he continued. "I know I can't change the past, but I want to show you that I'm committed to making things right." I felt a warmth in my chest. "I appreciate that, Ethan. It's a journey for both of us, but I'm glad you're willing to put in the effort." We talked for a while longer, discussing our goals and plans for the future. I felt hopeful about what lay ahead. As the weeks passed, we continued to communicate openly. I noticed that Ethan was more engaged in our conversations, and he was making an effort to show me that he valued our relationship. One evening, I decided to invite him over for dinner. I wanted to create a sense of normalcy and togetherness. When he arrived, I could see the excitement in his eyes. "Wow, it smells great in here," he said, looking at the table I had set. "Thanks. I made your favorite," I replied, feeling a sense of warmth. As we shared a meal, we laughed and reminisced about old memories. I felt like we were finally getting back to a place of comfort and love. After dinner, we sat on the couch, and I decided it was time to talk about something important. "Ethan, I want to discuss our relationship moving forward," I said, feeling a mix of seriousness and hope. "Okay," he replied, his expression attentive. "I want to make sure that we both understand the importance of communication," I said. "If something bothers me, I need to be able to express it without fear, and I hope you feel the same way." "I do," he said quickly. "I want us to have that kind of relationship, one where we can be honest with each other." "Good," I said, feeling relieved. "I think it's crucial that we both prioritize our bond. We've come so far, and I want to keep moving forward." "I promise I'll do my best," he said earnestly. "I don't want to lose you again." As we talked, I felt a sense of peace. I could see that Ethan was committed to making changes, and I was proud of him. As the evening came to a close, I realized that we were starting to build a new foundation together. It wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about learning from it and growing stronger. Weeks turned into months, and our relationship continued to evolve. I saw Ethan taking on more responsibilities, and I felt a growing sense of trust between us. He was working hard to keep his promises, and I felt grateful for the positive changes. One day, as I was painting, I reflected on the journey we had taken together. It had been filled with challenges, but we had faced them head on. I was no longer just a mother. I was a woman reclaiming her power and advocating for myself. As I stepped back to admire my painting, I smiled. It was a representation of my journey, a mix of struggles and triumphs. I realized that I was ready for whatever lay ahead. I had the strength to overcome any challenge, and I was excited about the future. Ethan and I were on a new path, and together we were building a relationship based on trust, respect, and love. I felt hopeful, knowing that we could navigate this journey together, and for the first time in a long time, I truly believed that our bond would only grow stronger.